Atlantis, the island that never existed but changed the world, words that spawned an obsession. Athens, 360 BCE. An old philosopher sits in his academy, surrounded by students. He is nearly 80 years old. His name is Plato, the most famous thinker of his age. He writes a dialogue about the ideal state, but to illustrate his philosophy, he tells a story about an island beyond the pillars of Hercules, beyond the known world, an island empire, mighty, wealthy, technologically perfect, and then destroyed in a single night. The island was called Atlantis. Plato wrote only two dialogues about it, the Timaeus and the Critias, a few thousand words, an unfinished tale. He died without completing the story, but the words survived, copied, translated, spread. And for the next 2,400 years, humanity would search for something that may never have existed. Plato's description. What did he actually write? In the Timaeus dialogue, Plato puts the story in the mouth of Critias, who recounts a tale from his great grandfather Solon, the Athenian lawgiver. Solon travelled to Egypt around 590 BCE. In the temple of the goddess Neith at Sais, elderly priests told him a secret. They kept records of an ancient war, a war that occurred 9,000 years earlier, long before Greece, before Egypt, before any known civilization. Atlantis, a massive island beyond the Pillars of Hercules, Strait of Gibraltar, larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined. The island's center, a marvel of engineering, concentric rings of land and water, 3 rings of water, 2 rings of land, connected by bridges and canals. The inner island, the empire's heart, a royal palace covered in gold, silver, and the mysterious metal orichalcum that gleamed with red fire. The temple of Poseidon, god founder of Atlantis, inside a colossal statue. Poseidon in a chariot drawn by 6 winged horses, surrounded by 100 Nereids riding dolphins. The outer rings, farmlands, gardens, harbours, canals brought water and ships from the sea to the city's very heart. The port buzzed with activity, 1,000 ships, merchants from across the world, society, 10 kings ruled Atlantis, descendants of Poseidon, and a mortal woman named Cleito. Laws carved on a pillar of orichalcum in Poseidon's temple. The kings met every 5 or 6 years. They sacrificed a bull. With its blood, they wrote oaths of loyalty to the laws, justice, wisdom, prosperity, but then the fall. For centuries, the Atlanteans were noble, but the divine blood diluted as they mixed with mortals. Greed, ambition, pride. They assembled a vast army and fleet, decided to conquer the entire Mediterranean world. Athens, small but virtuous, stood in their way. War. Athens, against all odds, won. And then the gods intervened. Zeus convened a council of gods. They decided to punish Atlantis for its hubris. In one terrible night and day, earthquakes shook the earth. Floods swept the shores. Atlantis sank beneath the waves of the Atlantic Ocean. The entire island, the entire civilization, millions of people, gone in a single night, 9,000 years before Plato's time. Here the Critias dialogue breaks off. Plato never finished the story. The narrative stops mid-sentence. Why? Did he die? Lose interest? Decide he'd said enough? Nobody knows. But the unfinished story became even more powerful. Human imagination completed what Plato left open: skepticism and belief. The ancient world divided. Aristotle, Plato's student, didn't believe it. He suggested his teacher invented Atlantis as a philosophical allegory. He, who created it, also destroyed it. For Aristotle, Atlantis was a tool, a way to illustrate a moral lesson about the dangers of pride and decline. But other ancient authors took it seriously. Crantor, 310 BCE, a Platonist philosopher, claimed he saw Egyptian columns that confirmed the Atlantis story. The geographer Strabo, 63 BCE to 24 CE, discussed Atlantis as a possible historical reality, though with caution. Plutarch, Pliny the Elder, mentioned the island in their works. For some it was history, for others, myth, for most, something in between. But one thing was clear: the story of Atlantis didn't disappear. The Middle Ages, forgotten but not dead. When the Roman Empire fell, classical learning declined in Europe. Plato's works were preserved mainly in the Islamic world. Arab scholars translated, studied, and preserved Greek philosophy that Europe had forgotten. In medieval Europe, Atlantis nearly vanished from collective memory, but not entirely. Legends of sunken lands existed everywhere. Lyonesse, a mythical land between Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, swallowed by the sea. Wuchas, a Breton legend of a city consumed by the ocean for its ruler's sins. Avalon, the mysterious island where King Arthur was taken. Were these echoes of Atlantis, or independent myths? Cultural memory of great floods permeated every civilization. The biblical flood, Mesopotamian, Gilgamesh, Hindu Manu, Greek Deucalion. Humanity remembered catastrophe, remembered lost worlds beneath water. Atlantis fit the pattern perfectly. The Renaissance, Atlantis returns, 1485. Florence, Marsilio Ficino, Italian Renaissance philosopher, translates Plato's works into Latin. For the first time in centuries, European scholars could read about Atlantis, and they were fascinated. The Renaissance worshipped antiquity. Plato was a philosophical god. If he wrote about Atlantis, it must have been real. 1492. Columbus reaches America. Suddenly the boundaries of the world expanded. There were continents beyond the Atlantic Ocean, lands Europe hadn't known about. If America exists, why not Atlantis? Some scholars began identifying America with Atlantis. Francisco Lopez de Gomera, 1552, suggested America was Plato's Atlantis. New worlds, ancient civilizations, Maya, Aztec, Inca, pyramids, advanced astronomy, complex societies. Perhaps these were Atlantean survivors. Sir Francis Bacon, 1626, wrote The New Atlantis, a utopian novel set in the Pacific, imagining Atlantis rediscovered. The age of exploration fed Atlantis fever. Every new discovery could be evidence, every unknown island a candidate. The age of pseudoscience, 17th to 19th centuries. Atlantis goes mainstream. As science advanced, Atlantis should have faded into recognized myth. Instead, it evolved. Ignatius Donnelly, 1882, published Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. This book changed everything. Donnelly, American congressman, amateur historian, argued Atlantis was absolutely real, not allegory, historical fact. His evidence: similarities between old and new world pyramids, flood myths in multiple cultures, advanced ancient technologies, linguistic similarities across continents. He claimed Atlantis was the common ancestor of all ancient civilizations: Egyptian, Mayan, Mediterranean cultures, all founded by Atlantean survivors. The book was a bestseller, translated into dozens of languages, spawned thousands of imitators. Atlantis became scientific sounding without being scientific. Theosophy added mysticism. Helena Blavatsky, 1888, founder of Theosophy, incorporated Atlantis into her occult cosmology. She claimed Atlanteans were the fourth root race of humanity. Psychically advanced, 7-foot tall giants with third eyes, they destroyed themselves through black magic and moral corruption. Survivors scattered globally, founding new civilizations while hiding ancient knowledge. Edgar Cayce, 1920s to 1940s, the sleeping prophet, he gave thousands of psychic readings mentioning Atlantis. He claimed Atlantis existed from 200,000 to 10,000 BCE. Atlanteans had flying machines, laser-like weapons, and crystal power sources. Three catastrophic destructions, the final in 9600 BCE. Records hidden in three locations: Egypt, under the Sphinx, Bimini, and Yucatan. Casey predicted Atlantis would rise again in 1968 to 1969, when underwater rock formations were found off Bimini in 1968. Believers claimed vindication. Geologists identified them as natural beach rock formations. Believers ignored the geologists. The 20th century, Atlantis everywhere. The search intensified. Dozens of locations proposed: Mediterranean, Santorini/Thera. Most credible, Minoan civilization destroyed by volcanic eruption around 1600 BCE. Atlantic Ocean, Mid-Atlantic Ridge, Azores, Canary Islands, Americas, Caribbean, Bahamas, Bolivia, Antarctica, before it was covered in ice. Europe, Ireland, Britain, North Sea, Doggerland actually existed, submerged after Ice Age. Asia, Indonesia, Japan, India. Every sunken ruin became proof. Every underwater formation a candidate. Technology fueled speculation. Sonar, submarines, satellites. Each advance promised to finally find Atlantis. Underwater archaeologists discovered real sunken cities: Pavlopetri, Greece; Bronze Age town, submerged 5,000 years ago; Heracleion, Egypt; lost city, found in 2000; Dwarka, India, possible Krishna's legendary city. But none were Atlantis. Each discovery proved ancient cities could sink, but none matched Plato's specific description. Popular culture exploded. Books, films, TV shows, comics, video games. Atlantis became adventure, mystery, lost technology, ancient aliens. Disney's Atlantis: The Lost Empire, 2001. Stargate Atlantis TV series, 2004 to 2009. Aquaman comics, endless documentaries. Atlantis meant whatever people wanted. Lost wisdom. Advanced technology, spiritual enlightenment, warning about hubris, proof of ancient aliens, government conspiracy. The original Plato story was buried under layers of speculation, mysticism, and entertainment. What science actually says. Modern archaeology and geology are clear. Atlantis, as Plato described it, a continent-sized island in the Atlantic that sank 9600 BCE, is geologically impossible. The Atlantic Ocean floor has been thoroughly mapped. No sunken continent exists. Plate tectonics explain how continents move slowly over millions of years. They don't sink overnight. The timeline is wrong. 9600 BCE was the end of the Ice Age. No advanced civilizations existed anywhere. The oldest known cities, Jericho, Çatalhöyük, date to around 9000 to 7000 BCE. Small agricultural settlements, not empires. Writing wasn't invented until around 3200 BCE in Mesopotamia. An advanced island empire with fleets and armies 11,600 years ago. No archaeological evidence supports it. But what about Santorini? The most credible theory. Plato's story was inspired by the Minoan civilization on Crete and surrounding islands, particularly Thera, Santorini. Around 1600 BCE, the Thera volcano erupted, one of the largest volcanic events in human history. The explosion was catastrophic. Tsunamis, ash clouds, climate disruption. The Minoan civilization, advanced, wealthy, with palaces and fleets, was devastated, not destroyed entirely, but severely weakened, eventually absorbed by the Mycenaean Greeks. Could Plato, or his sources, have heard garbled accounts of this real catastrophe and transformed it into Atlantis? Possibly. Shift the timeline, change the location, expand the scale, add philosophical meaning. Minoan Crete becomes Plato's Atlantis. The problem: Plato was specific. Atlantic Ocean, beyond the Pillars of Hercules, 9,000 years before his time. Santorini is in the Aegean, 1,200 years before Plato, not 9,000. If Plato meant Santorini, why change the details so dramatically? Unless he wasn't recording history, he was creating allegory. Why the story won't die 2,400 years, thousands of books, hundreds of expeditions, millions of believers. Why? Because Atlantis offers something irresistible. 1. Lost perfection. Humanity craves the idea of a golden age, a time when we were better, wiser, more advanced. Atlantis represents that lost perfection, a civilization we could have been, should have been, and maybe, if we find it, we can reclaim it. 2. Mystery. The unfinished story. Plato's incomplete dialogue. Humans hate unsolved mysteries. We need closure. Atlantis is the ultimate mystery, and mysteries demand solutions. 3. Validation. Finding Atlantis would prove ancient texts contain hidden truths. Mainstream science missed something huge. We're part of a longer, greater story. For believers, Atlantis validates their worldview. 4. Warning: Atlantis fell because of pride, greed, moral decay. Every civilization sees itself in Atlantis. A warning. This could happen to us. Environmental collapse, nuclear war, social breakdown. Atlantis is the cautionary tale that never gets old. Epilogue. The island that never was. Plato wrote a story, a philosophical parable about hubris and decline. He probably didn't expect it to be taken literally, but humans don't just want stories, we want them to be true. So we searched across oceans, beneath waves, in myths and ruins. We found drowned cities, lost civilizations, real catastrophes, but we never found Atlantis because it was never there. Yet Atlantis exists, not under the ocean, in the human imagination. It exists in every lost civilization myth, every sunken city legend, every golden age fantasy. It exists in our fear of collapse and our hope for redemption. Atlantis is the island we created to explain ourselves, our ambition, our brilliance, our capacity for self-destruction. Plato wrote about an island that sank, but the real Atlantis never sinks. It resurfaces in every generation, wearing new clothes, answering new questions, still lost, still searched for, still impossible, still real. The search continues. Somewhere, right now, someone is planning an expedition, analyzing satellite images, studying ancient texts, following a new theory. They won't find Atlantis, but they'll find something else: the enduring human need to believe in lost worlds, in knowledge hidden just beyond reach, in second chances for failed civilizations, in islands that never existed but will never truly disappear. Atlantis, the perfect myth, the eternal mystery, the island that changed the world by never being real.